Hi everyone, this is Jarek from AECC Global. Thank you so much for watching this video. And for this particular video, it's a guide to Australian tax for overseas students. And as many of you know, a lot of overseas students work or plan to work while studying here in Australia. And one of the most common questions that they often have is about tax and tax obligations while living, working, and studying here. In this series, Tax Return in Australia, a guide for overseas student, we invite Ms. Ha Wen, partner of Guest Accounting, to join us. But before I begin, I wish to introduce you about Ms. Ha and her background. Ms. Ha Wen is a partner director of Guest Accounting, a tax accounting and advisory firm based in Melbourne. Ha has been at Guest for 18 years and has extensive knowledge in tax planning, and advice. Ha obtained her MBA at Monash, Master of Tax at Melbourne Uni, and a member of both two largest accounting bodies in Australia, being CPA Australia and Chartered Accountants. She is a Deputy Chair of Victoria Public Practice Committee, a standing committee of Victorian Divisional Council, CPA Australia. She's currently teaching at Monash University. She is enthusiastic in sharing her knowledge with students, especially those coming from overseas. Ha said she was an international student herself when she first arrived in Australia to undertake tertiary study here. She experienced many challenges in adapting to a new environment and understanding about tax obligations in Australia, and is one of them. She hopes the information that she is going to share will provide some helpful information to many of you who are studying in Australia or even plan to come to study in the near future. Let's welcome Hawan.
Hi, Jared. Thank you for your introductions, and welcome everyone watching our videos and series for Australian Tax Guide for overseas students today. So before I begin, that just a bit of, apart from the background, like Jared has mentioned about myself, I came to Australia back in 1997. As an overseas student. So at the time is that I found that exactly the many challenges, the new environment, new culture, and when I started working 2 years into my course in Australia, then a lot of new things about tax that I don't even know. Back in my country, the tax system is totally different to what we have in Australia, and therefore that I hope that the information that I'm sharing with you today will help you to get the information that you don't have to search for like I did back in 20 years ago. So the first thing that I would like to share with you is that when you start working in Australia, you will find that the employer will ask you for a tax file number. So I would suggest that even that you know that you need you work in Australia and you need a tax file number, and therefore when you arrive in Australia, I would suggest that you apply for tax file number and don't wait until somebody asks you. So the very first thing that I would like to share with you is that how to register for a tax file number in Australia. And why do you need to have a tax file number in Australia? Because first of all, that it will when you apply for tax file number in Australia, the tax office in Australia, the name for that is Australian Tax Office, or the ATO is an acronym for that, will have to verify you whether you have the work rights or not before they issuing a tax file number. So as an employer, when they employ you, they have to ask for the tax file number, because people with a tax file number, they know that that person got a work right in Australia as well. So it's very important verification process that employer will ask you. And secondly is that if you don't have a tax file number, then the employer have to withholding tax at a highest marginal rate, and it can be as much as 45 cents in a dollar in Australia. So it can be very, very expensive, a lot of money. When you see that your hard work, nearly half of that is that you have to pay across to the tax office. So how can you apply for tax file number? One of the good things about the Australian tax system, or any government system in Australia, is that the information is very transparent. and you can
Yeah,
search for that. They can provide the all the gov.gov.au website. Is the government spend a lot of effort updating the information and make it relevant for you, isn't it, Jared? Do you think that is?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
mm.
I agree with that. As an international student myself, before, I find it really helpful.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I really think that these the Australian system, they spend the resources, the money to make sure that their website, the facilities is as easy as possible to provide the service seamlessly for anyone, including our overseas students as well. So how do you apply? How can you apply for a tax file number online? So the first thing that you have to be here in Australia first. So you cannot apply online if you have the student visa, but you are still overseas. So wait until that you arrive to Australia, because when you arrive to Australia, the government, the customs will check and scan your passport, and they will obviously, all the government departments in Australia, they share information. They know exactly when you arrive. So when you're here, so when you leave Australia, obviously that they scan your passport again, then they know that you are no longer here in Australia. So one of the most important conditions, you have to be here in Australia. And then you have to have a valid overseas student visas as well. So making sure that your visa still hasn't been expired yet and is before expiring, and you haven't got a tax file number, then probably that you need to get extension for the visa. And thirdly, that is your visa has to have a work right conditions, because it's something a lot of people asking help from our friend, for example. But when I apply for that, I would check and I would try to apply the tax file number for them, but they haven't got a work right, it wouldn't go
Yes,
through. So it's very important that you make sure that you have the work right in your visa.
absolutely.
Yep. And the final thing that I'd like to mention is that before I go into the details of that, how can you apply for a tax file number online with the online demonstrations,
Yes.
is that you need to, there's only one tax file number will ever be issued to you. So some people say that, okay, I was a student on a student visa before, but now I apply for a different type of visa, or maybe you apply for permanent residency in Australia when you finish your course, whether I need to apply for another tax file number again or not. So the
Yes.
question for you is that, no, you don't. So there's only one tax file number will attach to yourself, to your identity. So therefore that you please keep that. Please write it down, please keep it secured, and you don't need to reapply for another one if your circumstances change.
Yeah, got it. So, for instance, for international students coming in for a brief time, what if they don't have a tax file number as of now?
Yes, so
What would actually happen to them?
yes, so as I mentioned before, that if they don't have a tax file number, if you don't have a tax file number, then you start working. First of all, that the employer has obligation to ask you for a tax file number. They will give you the form called tax file number declarations, and you have like 28 days to get back the form to them. And during the time that you haven't get back to them, then the employer have the obligation to withholding tax from your salary payment. So you're not going to to receive a lot of money, because they will have the obligations to withhold 45 cents in a dollars, like I say 45%, because that's the requirement from the tax office for those situations haven't provided the tax file number accordingly. So in a few next slides, or I will show you how can you apply a tax file number in less than 10 minutes. It's very easy and
Yes,
simple.
yes, please. That would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, so the first thing is that I think that I always in love with Google. isn't it? Who doesn't like Google? Yeah. I don't think that we can we can live without Google nowadays, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
especially in Australia. I'm sure that in other part of countries you may have a different search engine instead of Google, but definitely in Australia, Google is the most dominant search engine, and it can lead you and find you the information that you need. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So first of all, simply type in apply for a TFN. So the TFN stands for tax file number. Then you'll find a link to the website. So be careful when you always search with Google and the website that come up with a search is that you need to refer to an authentic website, because there's so many websites nowadays try to pretend to be a authentic website of tax
Yeah.
office, making sure that you're using the website for Australian tax office, and that's with the domain name ato.gov.au. So that is authentic website. So
Yes.
when you click on that ato.gov.au, is that you will see that there are a few options to apply for tax file number, and the option that is relevant to the overseas student is that the apply tax file number for foreign passport holders, permanent migrants, and temporary visitors. So you are considered as a foreign passport holders. So
Yes.
there's other options as well, Jarek, is that
Yeah.
they for the local people, the one with the permanent residency and Australian citizen. I found that the overseas student or international student or the one with the foreign passport holders, the process of applying for tax file number is actually simpler because you don't have to verify your identity again. Because when you got your visa and your passport linked with your visa,
Yes.
before granting a visa, then obviously the government already verify your identity very carefully before granting you a visa. Unlike the local people that, some people that they can live in Australia, but they never have to apply for a passport because they never have a need to go overseas, for example. Therefore, that their identity is actually not as verified, and they have to go to the post office to verify their identity. For
Yes.
overseas students, we don't have to do that verification process at the Australian Post Office. So it's actually very simple. You can apply online with your passport, and if all the details match and you fill in correctly, then you will get your tax file number provided to you within 28 days. So I will
Absolutely.
go through with you the details. So first of all, there's some information that you require to apply for a tax file number. First thing is definitely your personal details. So your name, your date of birth, your passport number is very important. Passport number or travel document, same thing as the passport number. A postal address in Australia, because what it is that the tax office will not email you the tax file number. They will send you a hard copies, a paper copies to that postal address. It is another way of verifying that you are actually in Australia and you have a valid address in Australia to receive mail. So they're not going to just email you. And then you will need your contact details, the phone number and email in case that they need to contact you for questions. Look, hardly for the past how many years, nearly 20 years that I work at guest accounting as a tax agent, I hardly seldomly receive a phone call if I fill in all the details, correctly for my clients, and some of them are overseas students. But again, that you
Yes.
don't have to go through the tax agent services. You can do it by yourself and free of charge if you do it by yourself, isn't it, Jarek?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's what I've
So
been
I
doing
will
for the
go
past
through.
5 years.
Yes, yes. So I will go through that some very simple step on the screen here, that you can follow exactly this step here yourself. So first of all, that the step. So I click on the link that show the apply for tax file number and foreign passport holders. So this screen will open. So the first step that you have is that you need to enter your travel documentation details. So it says that what's your passport number, the travel document number, And then what is your country of origin of your passport? So, either you're coming from India, from Vietnam, from Singapore, so that you have to specify the passport, the issuing countries that you got the passport from, and the visa from linked to that, because sometimes you may have two passports, but the visas is linked to a certain passport, making sure that you're using that passport that had the Australian visa on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And have you ever visited in Australia before? You say yes or no, depending on your circumstances. And then you come to the next step, is that to provide your personal details. So very self-explanatory on the screen, your name. Yeah. So in terms of the name, I would suggest that you stick to your the order of your passport, because that's how the government can match your information, right? Because I know that there's sometimes in some country, in Asian countries, we have the middle name and the first name in different orders, like the way that Australian name would have, but making sure that you stick with the exact name that show in your passport. So for verification purposes, don't change the name order here. And then your full date of birth and your gender and everything else, and whether you have a spouse or not. If you do, then you also need to tell it here in this form here, your spouse details. Okay, so the next step is that the next page is that after you fill in your personal details, is that you tell the tax office whether you have any existing tax file number, or any ABN, which is stand for Australian Business Number, or CRN, which is a customer relation reference number, which is something to do with social security payment by the Australian government, which most of us don't have, the CRN number at all, because you're not eligible for Australian government benefit payments. So don't worry about this. So most of you will have that. Have you ever applied for tax file number? Maybe no, is the answer no, because you maybe the first time that you come to Australia haven't got a tax file number. Have you ever had an ABA number? Would be answer no. Do you own any property? So just answer based on your circumstances in here. And then do you authorize the ATO to send your tax file number to Centrelink? Given that you don't have details or link with the Centrelink, you just simply say no here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next stage is that you need to provide your address details. So this is the point that I raised with you before, is that you need to provide an Australian postal address so that the tax file number, once it's got issued by the government, by the ATO, it can send it to you. So making sure this is the address that you can receive mail. So even that you come here in Australia, you haven't got your permanent place yet, but you use your friend's address, for example, making sure that your friend can receive the mails and can pass on to you. So it's very important here. Yeah, and the next one is your current home address is the same as your postal address. It's up to you to fill in if your home address is different or not here. And finally, nearly finally, is that your contact details. So there's two options here. So the first option is that you do this form by yourself, and then you want the tax office to contact you if they have any further questions. You would answer me here. But if you need help from somebody else because you not feel confident to speak to the tax office, given that you're new and your language or any reasons, and you have to ask another person to provide help for you, so that you fill in their details in here, so that in case the government will need to get back to you, then they can speak to that person, because otherwise that when they call, for example, they always verify the details if the other person haven't got their details yet, isn't it? Because Jarek is a government here, they very strict in terms of before speaking to you, they will ask you a lot of questions to make sure you are the person that they speak, isn't it? Because identity fraud is always a challenge. Even more so in the current day and age, digital age, because there's a lot of people, like try to pretending that they are that person, but they're not. So that therefore, the Australian government is very cautious of all of that matters in terms
Yeah,
of, making sure that you are the person that they can speak to.
absolutely. How before you continue,
Yes,
for the for the other person, they need to be here in Australia as well, right?
yes, I think
Yeah,
I always suggest recommended is that you're providing a Australian phone number, and the most of the times the tax office get back, they will providing the they will ring you. They will ring because the email address is easily to also to pretend as well. So they will verify you on the phone verbally to make sure that that person is actually the person who get the authorization, and they need to get your details. So you're right, Jerry. So that person is ideally in Australia, and it can be a tax agent as well. So because, for example,
right.
at guest accounting, that we act for many clients, and sometimes we find that the tax office easily to deal with the taxation than the actual taxpayer, because they can
Yeah,
identify us easily. They know that we register with the tax office as a taxation. They know exactly where the taxation is, who the taxation is, and they can be certain that there is no identity fraud issues arise in this case.
absolutely.
Okay, so I think that and finally, very simple, is that you come to the last point is that you submit. So before and you see that on the last screen that you have the applications reference numbers there, and then they said in here that if you have not received your tax file number within 28 days, you need to phone. You can phone the tax office between using the 132861 number between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. So that comes to my tax tips for you when apply for tax file number,
Right. Yeah.
or when you are dealing with the tax authority in Australia, is that always keep the documents, retain the documents, because it's very important. Don't every time that you deal with the tax office or any government, making sure that you keep a soft copy, because sometimes paper we can get loose easily, isn't it, Jarek? So many
Absolutely.
papers
Yeah.
nowadays. But if you can save the PDF copies and save in your computer, and you've got a backup, then you can always refer back later. I found that I save everything now digitally, no longer the paper. I just scan or make a photos of the documents and save it in my computers or my Dropbox, which is always, I can always access
Yeah.
everywhere in the world. Yep.
Although I still keep a folder of all my documents though, as far
Yes,
as
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. It's very, very,
you never know.
you never know that one day that they ask for something. So that comes to my tax tip, which is as the last slide for the tax file number registrations here, is that first of all, the names that when you apply have to be exactly as they are printed on your passport or travel documents. Very important. So for easy for the tax office to verify yourself. Secondly, that the postal address is must be an address in Australia that can receive the mail for you.
Yeah.
Uh, Thirdly, that making sure that you save a copy of, like I call a PDF copy there, because I always save PDF before you submit the tax file number applications. Because what I found is that when I fill in the details, when I submit, I cannot go back and print out whatever the details that I provided to the tax office.
Right.
It's one step too late now, because I submit, they only give me the reference number, but not what the answers or responses that I provided before.
Yes.
So what I suggest you use that review before you submit, click review the form, print the PDF so you know exactly what you entered, because later they found, oh, I got the wrong mail, or
Yeah.
address, or the name is mistyping. So you can follow up with the tax office later if it's something not right there when you fill in the form.
Absolutely.
And of course, when you submit, then the last screen that I shared with you before with the reference number, save the reference number as well, because you may most of the time that you don't have to ring the tax office, because all your details is matched with their system. They will be able to verify you and issuing the tax file number. But if they can't, then you will need that reference number to ring the tax office and follow up with them. So keep that reference number in case. So from our experience, that even the government, the tax office say that it would take them 28 days from the time the application is lodged and until they will issue you the tax file number. But usually the turnaround time is about within 2 weeks. So it's very efficient, Australian government. But they always make sure that the 28 days is a statutory limit before you can ring them. So sometimes that they always have to prepare for something delay, or even like COVID-19 like this, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a lot of delays that are unexpected, but that's why the 28 days, it may take like 28 days before the tax office can have a turnaround time to get to you with the tax file number. And then when you got the tax file number, so time come, the tax office will send you the tax file number by post. So they call the TFN notifications. So making sure that you keep that TFN notification. What I mean by keeping that is that I always I recommend everyone to scan a copy of TFN notifications and save that securely somewhere in your computer, and make sure that it's saved that very securely, because you will need, first of all, you will need for your, when you work, you will need to provide that tax file number to your employers, or when you open a bank account in Australia, we will need to have that tax file number applied or provided to the bank. But what I mean by securely is that tax file number is actually one of the very most confidential details that you should not disclose to a lot of people, except for those that I put that in here. Only a few people and places should ask you for tax file number, including, of course, the ATO, because when
Yes.
you call them, then you need to verify, your details, and you need to provide the tax file number. So surely that they will need your tax file number to verify you, your employer. When you work, when you open a bank account, like I said, they will ask you for tax file number. Or when you use a registered tax agent services like our firm, we need your tax file numbers so that we can act for you. So, because we need to report to the tax office that, yes, we are acting as a tax agent for that taxpayer, and here's their details, including the tax file number. And could be like, another authority that may ask you, it is like the super fund, which I could come to you later. What is a super fund? When
Yes.
you work in Australia. So that's the
Absolutely.
tax tip. Yep.
Before we move on to another topic, another question that comes to mind would be, what if, by some means, all the soft copy, or all of the hard copy for the TFN, you actually forgot what your TFN is? How would you still be able to get your TFN via the ATO?
Yes, absolutely, you can, but just taking a lot of time to retrieve. I've actually dealt with a few situations like this for clients in the past, that they
Yes.
absolutely forgot their TFN. They don't know where they have put. They left Australia, and then now they return
Yeah.
to leave and to work here. So yes, so there's the channels again that if you go to search on ato.gov.au website, and you search for lost TFN number, they will guide you that there is an address that you can call first the tax office, and they will go through the verification process. So they will have to ask you a lot of questions, except for your tax file number, of course, because that's
Right.
that's the details that you don't know. So they can't ask you that. So they will definitely ask you your name, your date of birth, your address that you lived before when you were in Australia.
Yes.
And if you can recall when the address that you used as a postal address, that they when you applied for the tax file number,
Yes.
and other details, like your sometimes they will ask you for the who you work for when you are in Australia, your employer,
Yeah.
and what period that you work for. So all other details, or that they ask you about your employment, about your time that you stay here, or your visa number, your passport number,
Yeah.
is the details that they can actually help you to retrieve your tax file number.
So
Good
so it's
question, Jay.
like applying for another TFN again. that
No,
entire.
it's not actually applying for TFN. They always
I
give
mean,
your tax office, yeah, tax office always, you always, like I mentioned that earlier, that you only have one tax file number in your
yes.
lifetime. So they're not going to reissue you another one at all. Yeah.
No,
But
what I meant was, the process of applying for a TFN, like that long of a, that long of a process. It's like repeating. It's like repeating again of applying for a TFN.
yeah, absolutely. I think that is even taking more time than you apply from the beginning, but they don't
Yeah.
allow you to apply again. That's the problem, isn't it, Jared? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So I think that that's just to tell that it's very crucial that you keep your documents, because every time that you lost it, then you have to verify whether it is you, that is the person that got the tax file number, because as I mentioned, tax file number is the most highly confidential details. So the government will be very reluctant to give it out to another person because they worry of the misusage of the tax file number. So therefore, that is very important that you keep your record, so that you don't have to go through the process of losing it and then taking a lot more time and effort to retrieve the tax file number again.
Absolutely. So if anything, at least one of the takeaways that students would need to actually have after watching this video is to keep a record of your documents, digital and hard copy as well.
Yep, absolutely. I can't agree with that more.
All right. Thank you very much, Ha, and for our students out there, watch out for our next video.
Thank you, everyone.